What's happening? Happy Friday to you and yours. Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. It's been a crazy week here at the Nick Cattle Show with all of the news happening in the NFL, and it continues today with some breaking news. We'll get to that in a minute, but again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and also comment during this episode as we roll along here. The breaking news has to do with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, why could this also have to do with the Patriots? We'll get to that possibility in a minute. Let's start here. Minnesota, according to Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero, acquired the number 23 overall pick in the draft from the Texans. Minnesota gets pick 23 and pick 232. Houston gets 42, 188, and a second-round pick next year. That's the trade. Now, Rappaport, he brought up the 2016 Philadelphia Eagles trade. The idea of the Minnesota Vikings moving up in the draft. And it'd be rather obvious, right? The Vikings have Sam Darnold on a one-year deal. Cousins just went to Atlanta. The rest of the team wants to win. Justin Jefferson wants to win. I'm not totally sold that Jefferson would be thrilled with the idea of Darnold being his quarterback. So you've got Darnold on a one-year deal. That certainly smells like backup quarterback situation. And now you wonder, did the Vikings acquire number 23 to move up in the draft to select their next quarterback? It feels that way, doesn't it? It feels that you picked up number 23 because you want to move 11 and 23 to get up into the top 4 or 5 so you can draft that next guy. Now, let's not forget that the Patriots, all of that combine talk, coming out of the combine, oh, they love all the quarterbacks. They love all the quarterbacks. Drake May absolutely knocked them over with his interview. They don't mind picking any of the guys at number 3. And at the time, when all that was being said, my point was it was a bit fishy. I said it was a bit fishy. It's a bit fishy that early in the process, during Combine Week, the Patriots are leaking out that they love every single one of the top 3 quarterbacks. It seemed a little bit weird. It seemed a little bit off. So, was all of that combine talk to try to drive the price up at number 3? That is a legitimate question to ask, and it is an important question to ask now that we have this Vikings trade, and we would all look at this and say, yeah, they want to move up and draft that franchise quarterback. So let's get back to Ian Rappaport here, the 2016 Eagles trade that he brought up. The Eagles received the number 2 pick in that draft and a conditional 5th-round pick. The Cleveland Browns received the 8th pick, a 3rd and 4th-round pick in 2016, a 1st-round pick in 2017, and a 2nd-round pick in 2018. So that's what that deal was. The Eagles moved up to 2. The Browns got that pick swap, 2 to 8. They picked up a 3rd and a 4th in that year's draft. They picked up a 1st-round pick in the next year, and then they picked up a 2nd-round pick the year after that in 2018. So here's the question I have for you. Here's the trade that I have framed, and I want to know whether or not you would do it. And, of course, remember, I'm not going to be able to get to all the comments and questions. If you want to jump into the Super Chat, you can do that. That gets you to the front of the line. Send a Super Chat with your thoughts on whether or not you would do this trade. The Vikings get the number 3 pick from you. The Patriots, meanwhile, you get 11, 23, a 4th-round pick this year, because I looked this up and the Vikings actually have 2 4th-round picks. So you get the better of the 4th-round picks this year. That would be number 108. And you get a 3rd-round pick next year. Would you do it? Would you do it for 2 firsts, a 4th in this year's draft, plus a 3rd in next year's draft? Would you make that trade if you were the Patriots? Does that entice you enough? Again, I want your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment as always. I will stand by what I've said from the very beginning of this process. If you love the quarterback at 3, you take the quarterback at 3. If you love him, you take him. Simple as that. Nothing is more important than hitting on the quarterback pick. This is a golden opportunity for the Patriots at 3 to draft a franchise quarterback. If you love that guy, If you believe that he is the cornerstone of your organization for the next 10 to 15 years, then no matter what Minnesota is willing to trade you, I would take the pick at 3 and I would bring the quarterback to New England if you love that guy. Now, if you don't love that guy enough, if you're not head over heels, if it's not, as I say, a Hallmark movie, if you are not in absolute love with the quarterback, then you make this trade. I would make this trade. If I were the Patriots and I was looking at 11, 23, a fourth this year, and a third next year, maybe you can get them to sweeten it up to a second next year. I would take that. I would take that haul. That to me is more than a fair trade. 2 first-round picks this year. I know people want future first. Why worry about future first? You know what is in this class. If you can get 2 top 25 picks and 1 just outside the top 10, plus a 4th rounder, which is just outside the top 100, plus another 2nd or 3rd round pick next year, let's just call it a 3rd, I would make that trade if I didn't love the quarterback. If I didn't love the quarterback, I'd say, okay, I'm going to make that deal. I trust my evaluation. I trust my eyes, and I would make that deal. If you love the quarterback, then you take the quarterback. Why would I make that deal if I didn't love the quarterback? Because there are so many great options if you have those picks. You have the draft capital to move back up. You have 11 now. You've got 23. You've got your 2nd round pick. You've got your 3rd round pick. You have 2 4th round picks. Very close together. I think the Patriots draft 104 in the 4th round. If you got that 108 from Minnesota, now you're at 104 and 108. I mean, you've got 5 picks in around the top 100. And that would give you an incredible amount of capital. You could move back up. You could take 11 in another pick and move up a few spots and draft Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. You can stick and pick at 11 and 23. You could sit there and say, no, I'm good, because at number 11, I'm going to draft Olu Fashanu, the offensive tackle from Penn State, and then I'm going to come back at number 23 and I'm going to draft A.D. Mitchell. If you walk out of the first round, again, the premise is always this: if you don't love the quarterback. I can't say it enough. If you don't love the quarterback. If you don't love the quarterback, then you make this move. Because if you walk out of this first round with your franchise left tackle and a franchise wide receiver 1, what more would you want out of this draft if you're not getting the quarterback? Fashanu and A.D. Mitchell in the first round is pretty impressive given where you are right now. So draft capital to move back up. If you stick and pick, you can draft a young offensive tackle and you can draft a wide receiver 1. I also want to note this, and I'm not telling you it's connected or not. I just find it interesting. So today, Minnesota, they make this trade. And now we wonder whether or not if this trade is linked with the Patriots and Minnesota wanting to move up into the top 3 to draft their quarterback. So if that's the case, and the Patriots are sitting there at 11 and 23, I find it interesting that today, and this might have been the case no matter what, but I find it interesting that Alonzo Highsmith, the number 2 or number 3 guy, depending on who you believe and who you read, one of the top guys in this front office, do you know where he is today? He's at Penn State's Pro Day. And he's taking a look at Olu Fashanu. Now, is Alonzo Highsmith there at Penn State's Pro Day because he knows the Patriots could be certainly looking at a tackle instead of a quarterback? And so he's there scouting and talking to people about Fashanu? I just find it very interesting, right? You could easily link it. Again, I'm not telling you that's what's happening, but it's interesting that the Minnesota Vikings make that trade today. They're going to be linked with the Patriots. And now we have Alonzo Highsmith at Penn State's Pro Day working with Olu Fashanu. All right, before we have any more on this, and I have a lot more on this, and I know you have a lot of thoughts as well, let me tell you that the Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by First Class Glazing. If you need your bathroom renovated and or that bathtub glazed, check out First Class Glazing. Expert craftsmen dedicated to delivering top-tier results using premium materials and precise techniques. Bathroom space, the one that you've always wanted, you can get it. firstclassglazing.com or give Jose a call at 617-849-0513. That's 617-849-0513. And if you want your bathroom renovated and you get in touch with First Class Glazing, tell them that you heard about what they do on this podcast. You will get a free estimate and 10% off thanks to First Class Glazing. All right, before we move on with more of my thoughts on this possible Minnesota Patriots link, maybe Minnesota looking to move up to number 3, let me jump to a couple of super chats here. Matt S. says, trade down, overload offensive line for this season and the future, leads to another top 15 pick next season, then new quarterback and weapons, long-term plan, go Nick. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you. So Matt says, yes, he would take the deal. If you're just joining us, my question to you, now that the Vikings have added another first-round pick, if you don't love the quarterback at 3, if you're the Patriots and you don't love the quarterback, would you take those 2 first-round picks from Minnesota, a 4th-round pick this year, and a 3rd-round pick next year? Would you make that trade if you were the Patriots? 2 firsts, a 4th, and then you also get next year a 3rd. Now, of course, people would say it's not really 2 firsts. You're getting 1 first because of the pick swap, and you might want to hold out for a little bit more. But I would be willing to make that deal because I think 11 and 23 in this draft, I mean, that to me is your shot at bringing in 2 guys who immediately fill 2 critical holes on your roster for the next 10 years if you don't love the quarterback. So Matt says trade down, overload on the offensive line. Ryan Shaw says 11, 23, and then Justin Jefferson. I'm in. You know, I don't know if Justin Jefferson would love the idea of being here in New England. I don't know if it matters. I don't know if Jefferson would just want the money. Would Jefferson want to play with, Jacoby Brissett or maybe a rookie quarterback that is drafted later in the draft by the Patriots? Would that excite Jefferson? I don't know. Would the Vikings first and foremost want to deal Jefferson? Now, I know that they've come out this week and said they're not trading Jefferson, but that could just be posturing, right? I mean, when you start to put the pieces together, Minnesota could be selling people on the idea that they don't want to trade Jefferson because they want to get more value for Jefferson. And that might make the Patriots look at it and say, oh, they don't really want to get rid of Jefferson. Same thing, same idea with the Patriots pumping the tires of all 3 quarterbacks coming out of the combine with the idea of forcing teams to think, man, if the Patriots are going to trade that 3 pick, they're going to want a lot. We have to make it worth their while. The Vikings could be doing the same thing with Justin Jefferson, saying, man, if you want him, we have no plans of trading him. You better step the hell up. Ken jumps in. Super chat again. Thank you for the super chats. You jump to the front of the line. A lot of comments rolling in, of course. And if you want your comment question heard, throw a super chat our way. If, and it's in caps, if I'm doing this trade and passing on a quarterback at 3, I'm taking a flyer on Fields and giving him the receivers and offensive line. Couldn't hurt. It would be an option. It would be an option, especially now. And I know, look, everybody's telling you right now in the NFL that Justin Fields, they don't think he's a starting quarterback because nobody is showing urgency to trade for the guy. And I know my buddy Greg Bedard wrote about Justin Fields this week and saying, no one is in love with him. And, he talked to an NFL evaluator or somebody, a front office executive, and the front office executive kind of poo-pooed Justin Fields. But I would think, if you added A.D. Mitchell, a franchise left tackle, you did some other damage in the draft with your 2nd-round pick, your 3rd-round pick, and the 2 4th-round picks that you have, I think you could get Justin Fields for a 5th-round pick, especially if you're the Patriots because, they're up at the top of the 5th round. Mac Jones went for a 6th. I think you could possibly get Justin Fields for a top of the 5th-round pick. That would be one of the things I would look at. 5th-round pick, put talent around Fields, see what you got. If it doesn't work out, then he's gone. But all you did was spend a 5th-round pick. I would entertain that idea. For a fifth, I would entertain it. I wouldn't be jumping to give up a heck of a lot. And look, I know I said going back a couple weeks ago I would trade a third. That's when I thought Justin Fields was worth a second. But now that the NFL is telling us that he's not worth a second or a third or maybe even a fourth, if I can get him for a fifth, that would entice me. All right, more thoughts. If you made the deal with Minnesota, again, if you don't love the quarterback, if you love the quarterback, stick and pick at 3. Stick and pick at 3 if you love him. If you don't love him and you got that deal that I proposed, which was 11, 23, a 4th-round pick this year, and a 3rd-round pick next year. If you made that deal, you still have the flexibility to draft a quarterback. Maybe the Patriots like Michael Penix a lot. Maybe they like Bo Nix. You still have the ability to bring in a young quarterback. You could draft Penix. You could draft Nix. You could draft Spencer Rattler. Maybe one of those other guys has caught the eye of Elliott Wolf and company. You could also move the 34th pick with something else now because you have extra picks to move back into the first. How about this thought? And again, this is just thinking out loud because we just got the news about the Vikings, right? We're thinking out loud and wondering what the possibilities are if you made a deal with Minnesota and had 11, 23, and some extra picks. What if you really like Michael Penix if you're the Patriots? What if you drafted Olu Fashanu at 11? There's your left tackle. Then you drafted A.D. Mitchell at 23. There's your wide receiver 1. Then you traded back into the first round with 34 and one of your mid-round picks. And you traded back into the first round, late 20s, right? Somewhere in that area. And you drafted Michael Penix there at the end of the first round. Now you have, in theory, because if you're doing all of this, the Patriots would believe that all 3 of those guys are franchise players. In theory, you would have your franchise left tackle, your franchise wide receiver 1, and your franchise quarterback, all on 4-year contracts locked up with the ability to extend them to a 5th year with the 5th-year option. 3 of the most critical positions in the NFL. Imagine if you fill those 3 holes all in the first round of this year's draft. Again, that's the possibility that you're looking at. That's the possibility if you make a deal like this. If you love the quarterback, stick and pick. If you think he's a perennial Pro Bowler, all-pro type, could be your franchise cornerstone for 10 to 15 years, you draft the quarterback at 3. But if not, you're looking at the capability of filling a lot of holes. You could be looking at making, a number of moves to fill a number of positions. And you have extra capital in 2025 to utilize as well. If you wanted to move up in that draft, or if you wanted to use the 25 pick to move up in this draft. It just gives you a ton of options. All right, before I continue to go on, don't forget to give us that thumbs up and like. All the likes, all the world to us. As soon as you hit that thumbs up button, what happens is YouTube expands the reach. They say, hey, look, people are liking this podcast. Let's show more people the podcast. That's how it works. So don't forget to like while you're watching, subscribe, and comment. By the way, we hit our goal. Thank you. We hit our 2,500 subscribers goal. The goal was for April 1st. We beat it by 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We are now at 2,500 subscribers and building. Thanks to all of you. Let's continue to build the momentum. I got to figure out the next goal that's reasonable by April 1st. I'll have that next week. But thanks to every single one of you who continue to spend your time watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, liking it, commenting, and now those who have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Jump on in. Water is warm. Craft beer is cold. I saw somebody ask me earlier, craft beer today. Absolutely. It is a craft beer Friday. Almost always a craft beer Friday. So that'll be happening. So like, comment, and subscribe. Rate and review on Spotify and Apple Pods. And the Patreon, don't forget, Patreon has launched exclusive content for you. $1.25 a week, $5 a month. You get ad-free podcasts, you get a mailbag, you get a Q&A hangout twice a month. So check it out, patreon.com/Nick Cattles. All right, let's jump into another super chat. Let me see. Where did you go? There you are. Rob D. Joined late, but congrats, Nick, for crushing yet another goal. Volume system is the number 3 pick is 2,200. 11 and 23 is 2010. I would hold out for value above 2,200. I agree, Rob. I agree. I know you're just jumping in, and I appreciate the super chat, and I appreciate the congrats. You've been one of the guys from the very beginning, so I really appreciate you. But I agree. Just because the value chart tells you it's 2,200 and it tells you that 11 and 23 are 2010, I want more. I want more because you're moving up to draft the future franchise quarterback if you're the Vikings. And because it's a quarterback, you should get more out of that value chart. So that's why I say 11, 23. Give me a 4th round pick this year. That's 108 near the top of the 4th round. Give me a 3rd round next year. And I would take that deal if I didn't love the quarterback. Justin, TF Patriot, super chat. I appreciate you, Justin. Wouldn't it be smarter for them to trade with Washington? Start a bidding war for the 3rd if you don't love, I assume, May. Hashtag Nick's beer money. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate you, man. Wouldn't it be smarter to trade with Washington? Are we talking about smarter for Minnesota or smarter for the Patriots? I'm not really sure. Start a bidding war for the 3rd if you don't love May. So I'd imagine you're talking about moving up to 2 and then start a bidding war. I would just stay at 3 and move down if I were the Patriots. I mean, it's another conversation if you love Jaden Daniels. Been a long week, folks. Jaden Daniels, if you love him and you want to move up to 2, I would entertain it if you love him and think he's going to be the guy. Justin says Minnesota, I mean. Okay, so would it make more sense for Minnesota to move up to number 2? Sure, it would make more sense for Minnesota to move up to number 2 because that would guarantee, either May or Daniels the one that you love more, right? It would make sense, but it's also going to cost you more. And you might be, looking at the situation where you like both quarterbacks or love both quarterbacks, rather. And so it might not matter to Minnesota. Minnesota might be open to May and Daniels. But yeah, I mean, theoretically, moving up to 2 would be better. Washington, though, how do they feel, right? Washington would have to have a guarantee from Minnesota that Minnesota is going to draft somebody. And if Washington moves from 2 to 11, then they're out on a quarterback for the most part, unless you're going to draft J.J. McCarthy. And I don't love the idea of moving down to draft a quarterback at like 11. I don't like that idea. I want conviction from you. So if Washington moves out of 2, they're killing their chance at one of the top 2 quarterbacks. So if they love one of those quarterbacks, they're going to stick and pick. But it would make more sense for Minnesota because Minnesota would guarantee the quarterback that they like more, right? All right, just a couple more thoughts, and I want to move on to Keenan Allen because I found that interesting last night. If you hit on a young quarterback, say if you draft that quarterback in the 2nd round or you move up to the late 1st round, if you hit on that quarterback, you now have the franchise left tackle, the franchise wide receiver 1, and you have 2 more picks to utilize for weapons. And that's how you weaponize the offense via the draft. Here's the best thing about all of this. And this is going to make me feel better about it. It might not make you feel better. But the Patriots now have a great opportunity to do something that will change this franchise immediately. If the Patriots stick and pick at number 3, if they're offered this by Minnesota, and I would imagine Minnesota is going to offer something, right? They didn't pick up this 2nd first-round pick because they just wanted to. Pretty much everybody is looking at it saying, oh, they're doing that to move up in the 1st round for a QB. If Minnesota offers you a package and the Patriots turn that package down, then that tells me they have absolute conviction about the quarterback. That would make me feel much more confident in the quarterback that they pick at 3. Because if you turn down a bunch of picks from Minnesota If you turn that down, you're telling me that you're sticking your flag right there and you're standing by that quarterback, and you're not just picking the quarterback because he fell to you. You're not just picking the quarterback because of pressure. You're picking that quarterback because you believe he's a game changer. He's an impact player. He's your franchise guy for the next 12 to 15 years. So that's the good thing. If the Patriots make that pick at 3 and turn down a deal, that tells us whoever they pick at 3, they think could be special. They don't just love the guy. They think he could be special. If they trade out of it, then they had conviction about their feelings against those quarterbacks. Now, does it mean they're going to be right or wrong? We won't know until a couple of years, unfortunately. But for me, I could put my head on the pillow at night and say to myself, well, at least they were totally convicted. They were totally committed to what they did. Ryan James, are the Pats done with receiver and free agency? I want to get to that in a minute. I think they could be, Ryan. I think they could be done. After what happened last night, they could absolutely be done at the wide receiver position. And I don't think it's crazy to look at this and say, maybe the Patriots just thought that this wide receiver class was worthy at the top, and then the rest of the guys they weren't really interested in. They weren't going to bend over backwards to get anybody else. They went swinging big for Calvin Ridley because they thought that he was the number one guy after Evans and Pittman and Higgins were taken off the market. And maybe this was a one-horse race to them, and that's why they put all of that money on the table for Calvin Ridley, the 40 to 42 million, whatever it was, guaranteed. They might just look at this free agency class and say, no, we're good. We have no interest. We have absolutely zero interest in any of these guys, unless we can get one for like $3 million. We don't think any of these guys are going to be worth it. It feels that way to me, doesn't it? Because they just haven't shown the urgency. They haven't shown the urgency to go out and sign one of the free agent receivers. We wondered, if they didn't land Ridley, would they pivot quickly with plan B and sign somebody? They haven't. Now, of course, they might be interested. They might have been interested in Hollywood Brown, but Hollywood Brown went to the Chiefs because last time I checked, the Chiefs have won a couple Super Bowls recently, and they have a guy by the name of Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. But it does seem like they've lacked urgency at wide receiver in the free agency market, which would tell you, they weren't necessarily in love, or those guys just weren't interested in the Patriots. Curtis Samuel, he goes to Buffalo, but Buffalo has Josh Allen. It's very difficult to recruit free agents when your team is coming off of 4 wins and you don't know who your quarterback is, or at least you have Jacoby Brissett. So these guys are looking at situations, right? How much money am I willing to take from New England versus how much money am I willing to take from Kansas City or Buffalo or Cincinnati or one of these true contenders? All right, let's get to Keenan Allen. So Keenan Allen was traded last night for a 4th-round pick. Chicago, that's pick 110. The Patriots, their 4th-round pick is 103. If the Patriots wanted to make this trade, they could have easily made the trade for Keenan Allen last night. They had a better pick than Chicago had. I found it interesting that Chad Graff of The Athletic posted this morning that when the Patriots called the Chargers earlier in the week, they did not ask about Keenan Allen. So the Patriots called the Chargers, but they did not ask about Keenan Allen. That would tell you, if that is the case, and if somebody told Chad Graff that, if that's the case, then they had zero interest in Keenan Allen. They didn't even ask the Chargers about him. So from the jump, Allen wasn't a guy that they wanted to, look at and consider seriously. Very interesting note from Graff. They had no interest. Now, this move in a vacuum, I would absolutely have pulled the trigger. I would have pulled the trigger if I were the Patriots. If I'm Elliott Wolf and I can get Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick, I'm making that deal. Because number one, the price to me, that's a fair price, a 4th-round pick. What's the likelihood of a 4th-round pick hitting versus getting a bona fide number 1 receiver right now? So I think the price, to me, was worth it. I would rather have Keenan Allen on this team than have the 4th-round pick. That's first and foremost. Fair price. I just said how tough it is to sell free agents. Well, you could bring in an impact wide receiver via this trade without having to sell him on it, right? It's a trade. So I would have made this play. I would have made this play. 4th round pick, Keenan Allen. He's a number 1 receiver. He's on a 1-year deal at $18 million. Now, some people might say, oh, whoa. First of all, you have all of this cap space right now. The $18 million should not be a detriment. It just shouldn't. If you were willing to pay Calvin Ridley $22 million on the average annual value, paying $18 million for 1 year of Keenan Allen should not be too much of an ask. Actually, that contract is really the exact contract that you want if you want to bring in a veteran that can help right away and not give him long-term crazy money. So the 1 year, $18 million, I think that kind of fits. That fits to bring him in and say, okay, we've got the cap space right now to take that $18 million, and you also have some wiggle room to take Allen, and you could extend him out a year. You could always extend him through 25 and say, hey, you're going to get a 2-year deal. We're going to bump down your salary cap number, your cap hit. We're going to give you some money up front, and that's what we're going to do. You had wiggle room there. Secondly, the reason why I would have traded, again, in a vacuum, because we don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, man, the Patriots, oh, my God, what a massive whiff. Because if tomorrow we wake up and we find out that the Patriots make this trade with the Minnesota Vikings and they're going to draft 2 or 3 receivers, and one of those receivers is going to be a first-round pick like A.D. Mitchell, then we look like idiots, right? I can't tell you this is a massive failure of this offseason on March 15th. I can wake up tomorrow morning and they could trade for Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins. We have no idea, right? But in a vacuum, not knowing what's going to happen in the future, in a vacuum, just looking at this deal, I would have made it because you're giving your quarterback a binky. You're giving your quarterback somebody who can be depended on, somebody who's just continued to do work. Look at what the Bears are doing for Caleb Williams right now, because they're going to draft Williams number 1. He walks into Chicago. He has Keenan Allen and DJ Moore as his top 2 receivers. He has Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett as his top 2 tight ends. He has DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert as his running backs. That is giving your young quarterback dependable, productive weapons. So if I could have Allen for that year and work out a possible extension and add a year, yes, that's something that would interest me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We got some more super chats jumping in. Patrick Thomas with a super chat. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. Always appreciate those super chats. Mean the world to me. That Hoosier guy says DM is better. This JD, in my opinion, but who will he throw to? They have done 0 to more than add to the team. Okay, so what I believe is Drake May is better than Jaden Daniels, but who is that guy going to throw to? Because they haven't done much of anything in free agency at wide receiver. That's what I get from that. Appreciate your super chat. That Hoosier guy, always appreciative. And again, I'll say it, more likes, more eyeballs, like, comment, and subscribe. That goes into my point, right? That's why I'm looking at, somebody like Keenan Allen, and I say, yeah, he's a number 1. Is he perfect? No. We all know that he's, 31, 32 years old. We all know that he's had some injuries from time to time. He's not perfect. But in this situation, beggars can't be choosers. If you can get Keenan Allen, a bona fide number 1 receiver for a 4th-round pick, I would do it. I would absolutely do it. Eric says that he refused a pay cut. Yeah, I know. He wants his bonus on Sunday. But that's why, if you're the Patriots, you can offer him that extra year. You can tack on an extra year, give him a little bit of extra schedule, and now you got him for 2 years for your young quarterback. You can use that to your advantage. You can negotiate with that. I just think that Allen would have been a really good fit. A binky for your young quarterback. He can play inside. He can play outside. He would replace Devontae Parker almost immediately. So for people telling me, oh, he's 32 years old, Nick. Oh, he's been banged up. Is he better than Parker? What's our slogan? For those who haven't joined us, you might be joining us for the first time today. Our slogan all offseason is Patriots, just get better. Keenan Allen makes you better. Keenan Allen is a massive upgrade over Devontae Parker. 37-year-old Keenan Allen is probably an upgrade over Devontae Parker. So he would replace Parker. He's good. He's a mature veteran leader. And he's massively productive. People keep throwing his age out there. Just last season, okay? Just last season, Keenan Allen, 108 catches, 1,243 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And I remind you that was in 13 games. The dude played 13 games and caught 108 footballs for more than 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. And you're telling me you wouldn't take him for a 4th-round pick? Is he going to fall off of a cliff? Like he's going to go from the year that he had last year to being a complete waste this year? I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I don't see that at all. Sorry. And people keep throwing out, I've seen people say, oh, well, he's injured. He's not a healthy guy. He's not a healthy guy. Really? He played 13 games last year, okay? 13 games. He played 10 in 2022. So 10, yes, he was out. But do you want to know what he did from 2017 through 2021? 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 14 games, 16 games. And when he plays, all he does is produce. All this guy does is produce. He's had 97 or more catches in 6 of the last 7 seasons. He's automatic 1,000 yards. The last wide receiver that had 1,000 yards on this football team was Julian Edelman. And you wouldn't trade a 4th-round pick for Keenan Allen. Again, in a vacuum. 2 days from now, it might not matter. We could be talking about T. Higgins. We could be talking about A.D. Mitchell because the Patriots trade with the Minnesota Vikings. And we have no idea what Elliott Wolf is working on. And I'm not going to pretend like I know what Elliott Wolf is working on. All I can say to you is, right now, looking at this team, looking at that deal last night, I would have absolutely pulled the trigger for Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick. For all of the reasons I just laid out. Ian jumps in with a super chat. If you were to trade down, what would your quarterback of choice be? That's my personal move to add more draft capital as long as you stay within the first 15 picks. I don't like the idea of trading down to 11 to draft a quarterback. I just don't. If you love a quarterback enough to draft him at 11, then just draft him at 3. Because now you're playing around. Too much risk. If you move from 3 to 11 because you plan on drafting, for example, J.J. McCarthy, what happens if J.J. McCarthy gets picked between 4 and 11? You got to have conviction on the quarterback. If you love the quarterback in the first round, then you draft the quarterback at 3. Now, there's a balance. If your information tells you that Michael Penix is a top of the 2nd round guy, then you can trade down, and then you could trade back in for Penix. But if we're talking about, because a lot of people are telling us from what people are reporting, there are 4 quarterbacks seen as first-round talents right now. Jeff Howe was on the show about a week or 2 ago. Jeff said that, Penix is seen as a 2nd/3rd rounder by some people. Right now, it's mostly Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy. If you love one of those 4 guys, and you have an opportunity to draft one of those guys at 3, you draft him at 3. You don't move down and risk losing him. So that's what I would say. And I'm not on McCarthy. I might end up being wrong, and that'll be fine. But I am not on McCarthy. I'm sorry. I just didn't see enough at Michigan. I didn't see enough at the Combine. I know a lot of people are in love with him. And these teams know a hell of a lot more than I do, okay? I'm not sitting there having personal conversations with McCarthy or his teammates or his coaches. I'm not poring over every single solitary second of film with my scouting staff. But from what I saw, I wouldn't be comfortable with J.J. McCarthy. I would be comfortable with Drake May at 3. I want to see Jaden Daniels and his weight and his measurements before I tell you that I would be absolutely in love with Jaden Daniels, because I do think those are legitimate questions. Patrick Thomas, super chat. Patriots are playing the long game, not winning anytime soon. Need to reshape the culture in New England, load up on draft picks, and next year's wide receiver free agent class is stacked. Patrick, we talked about that yesterday. The idea of pulling a Houston Texans, right? And kind of waiting until next year to spend the big money. And if you do look at that free agency class, it is loaded at wide receiver. Now, of course, we don't know if all of those guys are going to be available. When you looked at it on paper this year, you had T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, and Mike Evans, and we know those guys didn't touch the market. So we got to keep that in mind. But it is loaded. It is loaded. William Sprague, Nick Cattles for GM. He will weaponize the offense and burn cash. I want to get to weaponize and burn cash in a minute. I'm glad that William sent that. I want to get to that in a minute, and I will. I appreciate you, William, for sending that super chat. Weaponize and burn cash. Those two terms are triggering Patriots fans around the world. I'm going to smash some of the narratives that you've heard regarding those two terms coming up in a few minutes. But thank you, William, for the super chat. Another super chat. Mike says the Jets have 10. People need to be aware if you trade down to 11, the Jets would love to screw you and let Denver or the Raiders trade up to 2-3 spots. Happy Friday, Nick. Thank you, man. Happy Friday. Hopefully everybody's got some plans this weekend, St. Patty's Day. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to absolutely crush it and have some fun. But, have fun. Be responsible. But the Jets are sitting there at 10. And look, I think the Jets stay at 10 and pick an offensive tackle. That's what I think they do. Could be wrong, but that's what I think they do. Could they move down? Could they try to screw over the Patriots? 100%. Patriots screwed them last year, right? 100% it's a possibility. And that's why the idea, if you love a quarterback, if you love one of these quarterbacks, and they're going to get and they have a shot of being drafted in the top, 10 to 15. Like, I'm not moving down because somebody's going to leapfrog me and I'm screwed. All right, like, subscribe, comment. Don't forget, we have hit 2,500 subscribers. We hit our goal. The goal was for April 1st. We've already surpassed that goal, which is tremendous because of all of you. If you like what we do here, don't forget to like the podcast on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Pods, rate and review. And if you like what we do, if you love what we do, we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/Nick Cattles, Cattles. $1.25 a week, $5 a month. Trade one of your pints for the Patreon. Exclusive content, ad-free pods, mailbag, Q&A. We're going to do some post-game stuff for the Celtics during the playoff run. So we have a lot of things planned. So check out that Patreon. All right. Quick questions coming out of the Allen thing, and then I'm going to get to the smashing of the narratives. We're going long on this Friday. Whatever, it's been a busy week. Here are some questions that I have after the Patriots decided to not trade for Keenan Allen. And I think they're legitimate questions, and I think they could be legitimate pushback. So, number one, do they have another move up their sleeve? Did they decide not to trade for Keenan Allen because they have another move up their sleeve? It's March 15th. There's a lot of offseason left. Are they looking at Higgins? Are they looking at Ayuk? Are they looking at Deebo Samuel? Is this Vikings trade a possibility? So is that why? We have no idea of what the Patriots are working on. And that's why I said in a vacuum, right now, today, I would have pulled the trigger on Keenan Allen. But if you're telling me there's a bigger master plan that's going to get you a wide receiver one that is younger and more talented than Allen, then I'm willing to see that play out. So do they have another move up their sleeve? And that's why they weren't urgent with Allen. Another question I have, is this just team philosophy? Is it a team philosophy to stay away from guys who are older than 30 years old and play skill positions? Is that what this is? And people will say, well, Ridley is 29. He's going to be 30 in December. We've talked about Calvin Ridley. Ridley also missed almost 2 years of his career. So I don't think his legs are 30-year-old legs. He hasn't played as much football. There's a lot less wear and tear with Calvin Ridley. So is this just philosophy? Do the Patriots look at this and say, you know what? If the guy is over 30 years old, we're just not going to trade for we're not going to trade an asset for somebody who is older than 30. We're just not going to do it. And if that's the philosophy, then I get it. If that is the philosophy, then I understand. Speaking of philosophy, is it a team philosophy during this rebuild to not deal a draft pick if we're talking about that guy being on a one-year deal? If Keenan Allen had 2 years left on his deal, would this trade have been made? Do the Patriots not want to give up picks for one-year deals because they're concerned that the guy could be a flight risk? And so they say to themselves, a fourth-round pick for 1 year of Keenan Allen coming off of a 4-win season, it doesn't make sense. And, when you look at my theory, my opportunity of, hey, maybe you give him an extra year or two on that contract and drop his cap number. What if Keenan says, I don't want to stay in New England beyond this year? So this could be philosophical from the front office. We're not bringing in skill position players that are older than 30. We're not trading a pick for somebody who's older than 30 and has 1 year left on the deal. And they could have just looked at it and said, wide receiver-wise, it's Evans, Pittman, Ridley, or bust. Unless we can get somebody super, super, super cheap, those are the only receivers that we're interested in. Those are the only guys at that position that check the boxes that we have. And that would be disciplined. That would be disciplined. By the way, Todd McShay just posted on Twitter, the Vikings don't make this move unless they've already had serious discussions with a specific team. What it will take to move up for the quarterback they desire. So is it New England at 3 or a team picking a few spots down for J.J. McCarthy? I agree with that. You don't make this deal unless you know you can make a trade that follows to move up to draft a quarterback that you want. The question is it Drake May? Is it Jaden Daniels? Is it J.J. McCarthy? Which quarterback do the Vikings love? But I agree with Todd McShay. You have to know that something is set before you make this trade. You have to have confidence that you can move up before you pull this trigger. So it'll be interesting. Is Drake May the apple of the eye, or is it J.J. McCarthy? All right, let's get to the narratives. I want to smash some of the narratives. I'm going to take some of these lazy narratives that you've heard in the echo chamber being parroted over and over and over again. I'm going to take those narratives and smash them to little itsy bitsy pieces. And maybe you are somebody who's actually been part of the echo chamber, and hopefully I will change your mind. Maybe you'll look at this in a different light, because I've heard a lot of things the past few days that have irritated me, and I want to get them off my chest before we get into this weekend and we have some fun for St. Paddy's Day. Let me start with weaponize. A lot of people throwing out weaponize. It's similar to the full throttle punchline, right? Weaponize, weaponize, weaponize. Elliot Wolf told us he was going to weaponize this offense. Let me first tell you that the draft is the most important. The draft is the most important component of becoming a winning football team. And it's not even close. The draft is the most important factor. It's not free agency. It's not trades. It's the draft. Look at every contending team right now. What is the common denominator? Drafting well. Drafting offensive talent. If you don't believe me, let's go through it. Buffalo has Josh Allen. Drafted. James Cook. Drafted. Knox and Kincaid. Drafted. Khalil Shakir. Drafted. How about Cincinnati? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, now, of course, sent to Houston, but all of those guys drafted and developed. Kansas City, Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek Hill before he was traded to Miami. Rice, Pacheco, all of them drafted and developed. The Lions, St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, all drafted and developed. So here's some breaking news for people who keep, saying, oh, free agency. They didn't go out and spend $1 billion on somebody, even though they offered a crazy contract to Calvin Ridley, which was above what I anticipated. But I digress. No, they said they're going to weaponize. Why are they not weaponizing? It's March 15th. Breaking news. You can weaponize the offense via the draft. That's precisely what teams have done. How about San Francisco? Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, their quarterback. You can weaponize the offense through the draft. It's not to say that they shouldn't sign a vet wide receiver. I wanted them to sign a vet wide receiver. But it is to say we should not act like if you don't bring somebody in via free agency that it's an impossibility to weaponize an offense. That would be absurd. So why are we jumping to conclusions? They're not weaponizing. How about we talk on May 1st? If we walk out of the draft with a franchise left tackle, a franchise wide receiver, a young quarterback, another wide receiver, maybe a young developmental tight end, all those people that are sitting there yapping about weaponizing, I can guarantee you they will not come back and say, okay, I was wrong. They went nonstop offense in the draft, and now they have a bunch of young offensive guys that could actually weaponize this offense. Nobody's going to come back and say that. Nobody's going to come back and say that. It's not drafting. It's not the only way to weaponize your team, but you can weaponize your team via the draft. If you walk out of this draft with Drake May, A.D. Mitchell, and Jalen McMillan, you have weaponized your football team. You can also weaponize via trades. So we can't just sit here and say they haven't weaponized. You promised us to weaponize the offense. It's free agency and you're not doing it. You can weaponize via trades. Stephon Diggs weaponized Buffalo's offense. Tyreek Hill weaponized Miami's offense. Keenan Allen yesterday is going to weaponize the Chicago offense. That's how I feel about the weaponized stuff. Now let me get to burn some cash. This is another full throttle thing, right? Let me first say this. Burn some cash, full throttle. We have to acknowledge that burn some cash was number one said by a rookie head coach who I think was joking around on the radio. Now, should he have said it? No, because certain people won't understand the context. They'll get triggered. They'll go on Twitter. They'll go bananas. I took that as a joke. They do have cash to burn. And I'll even add this. They actually have burned cash. Stay tuned for that one. It's gonna melt some people's brains. The Patriots have actually burned cash this offseason. Just wait for it. I don't lie to you. Just wait for it. Context is king. But you got a rookie head coach in a radio interview laughing as he says, we're going to burn some cash. Then you have the owner of a baseball team with the media in a scrum being asked serious questions, an owner that has owned the team for more than 20 years, saying full throttle. That's the first difference. Who said it? To me, that matters. The owner has the ultimate responsibility. The owner is the one that makes decisions, right? And says, yeah, you can spend the money. Go spend the money. Gerard Mayo joking around in a radio interview to me, it is what it is. Also, can we not be disingenuous? Can we acknowledge that shortly after Gerard Mayo said that at the combine, he walked it back? Why do we act like he didn't walk it back? He walked back to burn some cash because he realized that people took it seriously and everybody was going overboard with it. So he walked it back. Does that not count? Mayo comes out and says, mea culpa. That doesn't count. So he said burn some cash, and we focus all on that because it builds our narrative and it gets us all fired up, and we could sit there and tweet with angry fingers on Twitter. But when he walks it back, we don't pay any attention to that and say, well, he walked it back. He walked it back. That's what he did. He walked it back. The Red Sox never really walked it back until Sam Kennedy said, yeah, we put parameters on Craig Breslow. And that took months for Kennedy to say that. There was this weird dance. Tom Werner is saying, well, that's not what I really meant. I didn't really mean full throttle when he certainly meant it. There was mixed messages. Tom Werner was talking about spending money. Sam Kennedy was like, well, we don't really have money to spend. But It was a mess. It was a communicational mess. Let's get to the part here, though. Burn some cash. Burn some cash. Let me bring up Ashton. Ashton. By the way, Ashton, I'm going to act like that awful tweet you sent me, I think it was yesterday, it doesn't exist. And I'm going to say that because I am going to take your point right here and I am going to absolutely kill it. Ready? Here's how I'm going to absolutely decimate this idea that Robert Kraft is cheap and Bill wasn't the problem. Okay? Here we go. And I'm talking about this offseason with the new regime. Cash spending. How many people have said cash spending? Somebody from 2 to 6 yells it all the time, right? And look, 10 years, it's there. No doubt about it. But if we're going to go off of cash spending, and if we're looking at this offseason, that's the argument. The argument is that they're not weaponizing the offense because they're not burning cash this offseason. That's the argument. That's the argument that I'm going to take down. What's the truth? Here's the truth bomb, okay? Here's the truth bomb. The Patriots have burned cash this offseason. They've actually burned lots of cash. And they've burned lots of cash compared to the rest of the NFL. Have I blown your mind yet? If I haven't, just wait, because I have facts behind me that back that up. Okay? What do you think the Patriots are in total spending this offseason? Out of 32 teams, where do you think the Patriots sit in total spending? Throw your comments in. Throw your comments in. Where do you think the Patriots currently stand cash spending this offseason in the NFL? There are 32 teams. I've got a fourth from Nunya. I've got a fifth from Mike. I've got a fifth from 618. I've got a fourth from Mike Larry. Hassan says 1. Mike says 3. NDS says 3. Brady says 3. It's not that much. You're shooting a little high. They are 9th in total spending, okay? So they are a top 10 team in total spending. They have spent the 9th most in the NFL this offseason. The 9th most right now, okay? In guaranteed money, the Patriots have spent the 10th most in guaranteed money. So in both total spending and in guarantees this offseason, the Patriots are in the top 3rd of money spent in the NFL as of right now, March 15th. And if you think this is going to change, it is going to change. And it's actually, I think, going to change to even more money from the Patriots. Hold on. I'll tell you why. So in both total spending and guarantees, the Patriots are in the top 3rd of cash spent this offseason right now. Okay? How about in full guarantees? Full guaranteed money. The Patriots are 7th this offseason in full guaranteed money given out. 7th. Just outside the top 5 of full guarantees. But wait, it gets even better. Because people will say, well, Nick, wait a minute. They're spending this cash, but is it real cash? How many of these contracts are backloaded? Blah, 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 blah. Well, I've got bad news for those people. The Patriots are number 4 in first-year cash. What does that mean? It means that right now, for the 2024 season, the money that has been spent this offseason, the Patriots are 4th overall in the league. Have I executed the list yet for you? I'm sure many of you will still yell about how they haven't burned cash. But again, 9th in total spending, 10th in guarantees, 7th in full guarantees, and 4th in first-year cash. That is burning cash. Rob D, I love you, but we can't do this. Owenu's signing bonus is the reason for a lot of that. So are the other teams. The other teams are going to be up in spending because they spend big money on a guy, right? Houston spent a ton of money on Danielle Hunter, so their spending is going to go up. As a matter of fact, Here's something that nobody really talks about when they talk about the cash spending of the Patriots. The Patriots, they don't spend as much at the quarterback position as other teams do. They don't spend as much money on the wide receiver position as other teams do because Bill Belichick believed, and this was highly successful for a long time, Belichick believed that it was about the 53. He liked to balance out a lot of the money that was paid. So when you're not spending, these teams that are way above the Patriots, they're spending $20 million on a wide receiver. They're spending $40 million on a quarterback. When you don't spend as much money on the offense, you're not spending as much money because the NFL nowadays is on offense. So we can't play the game and say Mike Owenu. Mike Owenu counts. Are we supposed to take Mike Owenu's contract out of the conversation? Everybody who's in the top of spending, they have a contract that's a lot of money. That's how this works. Super chats. Ryan James jumps in, says Penix and A.D. Mitchell. Let's go. Appreciate you, Ryan, for the super chat, as always. Antoine Perkins, what are the chances New England trades up for the number 1 pick? You've talked about being aggressive in the draft with the 34th pick. Texans had 2 first-round picks that were back-to-back picks. No one saw that coming. We talked about the Texans yesterday about how aggressive they were in the draft. I don't think they'll move up to 1. Number 1, it's kind of weird to say, but Caleb Williams, if Chicago looks at him as a generational quarterback, then I don't see them trading out of number 1. I don't see that happening. Also, what would it take to move up to number 1? Is it worth giving that up? How high are the Patriots on Caleb Williams? You would have to think he's intergalactical. So I don't see it happening. But if I did think he was intergalactical, if I did think he was generational, then I would trade up to 1 because nothing replaces a generational quarterback. Ayo, Box says, Bears making these moves to actually get Fields help. They trade number 1, shake things up at 2 and 3. If not, we should trade 3 to get more picks and Penix later. I think Chicago's drafting Caleb Williams. I think the plan is Caleb Williams, surround him with talent, and right away we're going to be a top 10 offense. I think that's the plan. Could be wrong, but I think that's the plan. And we've talked about it. If you don't love the quarterback at 3, yes, I would trade down. I would absolutely trade down. That's what I would do. I would trade down and pick a tackle. I know some people would say trade down and pick a receiver. So, Ashton, I smashed your point, and now you're moving the goalposts. It's a shame. It's a shame. They're spending money. Whether it's re-signing players, whether it's bringing people from the outside, they're spending money. They're spending money. Did Gerard Mayo say we're going to burn some cash on outside free agents? No, you're perceiving that from what he said. You're taking that from him. He didn't tell you that. Even if I thought it was a joke, which I did think it was a joke. Did he say we're going to burn some cash and go out there and we're going to sign all of these big names from other teams? He said we're going to burn some cash. And I just gave you the stats of the cash. If you can't accept it, then that's too bad, man. It's a shame. It's a shame. Admit you're wrong. Take the L and move forward. It's fine. If I were wrong, I take the L. Just take it and move forward, my friend. And again, didn't appreciate the tweet. I'll just say that. Just say that. I treat people with respect. So maybe just one thing you should think about. So I gave that all to you. And on top of it, let me just remind you that the Patriots will also, I think, extend Christian Barmore. And Christian Barmore is going to get a bunch of money. Greg Bedard thinks they're going to also extend Ramondre Stevenson. What if they make a trade in 3 days for T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk and give that guy a big fat contract? So the narratives they're just being parroted like they always are. That's all it is. That's all it is. Carlos, I say draft Marvin Harrison, trade up to 4, take the QB. Boom. Now we are the Texans. If you love the quarterback, yes. If you love J.J. McCarthy, you think that guy could be the dude, then yes. All right, we've gone really long. I appreciate you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Give us that thumbs up. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. All the likes mean the world to me. Builds the community, builds the traffic. We expand our reach. Also, subscribe. That helps. We hit our goal of 2,500 subscribers this morning. Thanks a lot for that. So, like, comment, subscribe, rate and review on Spotify and Apple Pods. That also helps the podcast as well. And the Patreon page, you want to check it out. It's patreon.com/Nick Cattles, Cattles. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy your St. Paddy's Day. Be responsible, but have some fun. Have lots of fun. If something breaks over the weekend and I'm not out and about already, we will be jumping on this and breaking it with you. But if not, until Monday, 11 a.m. sharp, this has been the Nick Cattles Show. I appreciate all of you. Have a great